Buffalo, we need to talk. Because what has unfolded over the last few days at St. John Fisher isn't just training camp news, it's a full-blown storm system of storylines, and somehow it's still only day 2. Picture this: thunder rolling over Pittsford, lightning cracking across the sky, rain hammering the practice fields, and somehow that's the calm part of the story. Because off the field, in meeting rooms, in press conferences, and in one jaw-dropping moment involving a 5-figure check, the Buffalo Bills are writing a training camp narrative nobody saw coming. So grab a coffee, settle in, and let's break down everything you need to know before pads even go on. Let's start with the schedule, because context matters here. The Bills' time at St. John Fisher this summer is shorter than usual, and that's by design. The franchise is gearing up for a new stadium, and every single practice carries a little more weight because of it. July 31st brought a lighter walkthrough style session, a nod to modern infilpa rules that limit how often teams can go full contact. And yes, that has some of the league's old guard grumbling. Even Tom Brady has recently voiced frustration about how today's practices compare to the old days. But love it or hate it, that's the new reality, and Buffalo has to adapt like everyone else. What's fascinating, though, is how Joe Brady is running the show differently than his predecessor. This isn't just a change in play-calling philosophy, it's a full tone shift for the entire organization. First horn now blows at 8:30 in the morning, a full hour and 15 minutes earlier than before, giving players significantly more time to recover, study film, and reset in the afternoon. Early reports from the sidelines describe a coaching staff demanding urgency from the jump. Brady's message has essentially been, wake up and let's go. No excuses, no easing in. And through 2 rain-soaked, sloppy practices, that message is already being tested, because this Buffalo team is expected to handle any weather condition thrown at it, storm or otherwise. Now, let's get to the story everyone's buzzing about, because on the field, something special appears to be happening between Josh Allen and his star wide receiver. If you've been worried about chemistry issues carrying over into this season, you can put those fears to rest. Reports out of camp paint a picture of a quarterback and receiver who are finally, truly in sync, reading each other, anticipating routes, and connecting on plays that look effortless. There's genuine buzz that this wideout could be in for the best season of his entire career. Day 1 brought a couple of highlight reel grabs. Day 2, a 50-yard touchdown that had the sideline buzzing. Sure, there were a few drops mixed in, that's training camp, that's expected, but make no mistake, this is Buffalo's unquestioned WR1 heading into the season. And here's the twist that makes this story even more compelling. Josh Allen himself admitted he'd been putting almost too much pressure on the connection, trying to place every single throw with surgical, obsessive precision. His receiver had to pull him aside and essentially say, stop aiming, pick a spot, trust your arm, and let it rip. According to those inside the building, that one conversation flipped a switch. Suddenly, throws that were tight and mechanical started looking loose, natural, explosive. It's a small mental adjustment, but in an offense that leans so heavily on trust between quarterback and receiver, it might end up being one of the most important developments of the entire summer. But that's not the only receiver story worth watching. Keon Coleman, Buffalo's youngest weapon in the receiving corps, is out there working on kick returns, a subtle but telling sign that his depth chart spot might not be locked in just yet. Early on, Josh Allen deliberately tested him, throwing his way multiple times. The very first target dropped, but instead of shying away, Allen went right back to him on the next opportunity, a vote of confidence that speaks volumes. Coleman is still only 23 years old, still growing into his NFL body and mindset. And according to the front office, something has clicked. The word going around the building is that the light has finally come on for him. If that maturity holds through the season, Buffalo might have found its true WR3, a player capable of stretching a defense in ways this offense desperately needs. Now let's talk about the story that might be the most heartwarming development to come out of any NFL training camp this summer. Everyone assumed this next player would be a locker room headache. He's on his 7th team in about 8 years. He's bounced from city to city, most recently spending time in Chicago and Houston. Before camp even officially began, there were already whispers of friction. Coaches having to step in and ask him to shut down a live stream during team activities. Fans and analysts alike were quick to label him a potential distraction. A locker room risk not worth the gamble. And then, the opposite happened. Completely, stunningly, the opposite. According to those close to the situation, the coaching staff had one direct, man-to-man conversation with him. No locker room drama, no public confrontation, just a quiet, honest talk about expectations. Both sides moved on from it almost immediately. But then came the moment that changed everything. This player on a modest 1-year, $3.5 million contract sat down with a staffer at a nearby college and paid $20,000 out of his own pocket to wipe out her student loan debt. No cameras forcing the moment, no headline-chasing press release, just generosity, quietly delivered. This is a defensive back with 20 career interceptions, a Pro Bowl-level URSM, and, as it turns out, a heart far bigger than his reputation suggested. On his own live stream shortly after, he opened up about wanting to be a Buffalo Bill for the next 5 years. He said he wants to be a Bill for life. He praised the culture, praised the coaching staff, and specifically called out the new defensive coordinator for holding players accountable and demanding nothing less than 100%. For a guy who's worn 7 different uniforms in less than a decade, just 3 days into camp with Buffalo, he says he's finally found home. If that doesn't tell you everything you need to know about the culture shift happening inside this organization, nothing will. Speaking of culture shifts, after 9 seasons, the franchise said goodbye to its longtime defensive mastermind this offseason, and a new era is officially underway. In a touching moment early in camp, the incoming defensive coordinator publicly honored his predecessor's legacy before pivoting the unit toward a more multiple, positionless scheme. The philosophy is simple but aggressive. Force opposing offenses into difficult blocking decisions before the snap, create more one-on-one matchups, and open up better angles for both the run defense and the pass rush. Some players who've spent their careers with a hand in the dirt are being asked to stand up. Others who've stood tall for years are dropping back down into stances that better fit their bodies. It's about putting talent in position to actually win. And nowhere is that philosophy more important than with the interior defensive line's most talented and most snake-bitten piece. Drafted in the first round back in 2019, this defensive tackle has flashed elite, game-wrecking ability whenever he's been healthy enough to stay on the field. Last season, injuries limited him to just 3 sacks and a fraction of his potential snap count. But heading into what's now his 8th season, both the general manager and the new coordinator are fired up about what they believe is finally coming. A full, healthy season where his ceiling actually gets tested. If he stays on the field and pushes past 10 sacks while holding strong against the run, Buffalo could be looking at a legitimate all-pro caliber force up front. That disruption up the middle should only help unlock the Bills' longest, most athletically gifted edge rusher, who is reportedly transitioning into more of a standing role this season. His length has always been a weapon against the run. Now the coaching staff wants to weaponize it in the pass rush too, chasing double-digit sacks. And with several other pass rushers finally healthy and back in the building after injury-plagued seasons, there's a real sense that this front 7 could unlock levels of production Buffalo simply hasn't had in years. Then there's the story of a 4th-round rookie linebacker who nobody expected to matter this early. Coming out of college with one of the most explosive athletic testing profiles ever recorded at his position, he's currently holding down significant first-team reps at inside linebacker, and the door appears wide open for him to compete for a starting job right out of the gate. That's virtually unheard of for a rookie in a defensive scheme historically built on veteran trust and structure. But according to the front office, this kid had an outstanding spring, and his energy and passion for the game have been impossible to ignore. Don't be shocked if come week 1 he's lining up as a starter. And here's the part that should really excite Buffalo fans. It's the defense that's been dominating these early practices. In a league where the story at this point in camp is almost always the offense can't be stopped, Buffalo's defense is stacking wins. Young players are making legitimate plays, veterans are locking in. For an offense that's expected to threaten 30-plus points a game on its own, having a defense that can hang with that kind of firepower in camp is an incredibly promising sign. Even with the obvious caveat that everything changes once the pads go on. In the secondary, a fascinating youth movement is brewing. Buffalo's newer cornerback duo represents two very different skill sets. One, a long, athletic zone corner with serious ball-hawking instincts. The other, a physical press-man specialist ready to get his hands on receivers at the line. Together, they represent the long-term future of the position. Meanwhile, the team's top cornerback is being given the freedom to shadow opposing number 1 receivers or hold down an entire side of the field, depending on what the game demands. And in a particularly interesting wrinkle, the new coordinator has already described one young defensive back as a true man-to-man corner who can run and challenge receivers, a notable departure from the zone-heavy, ball-hawk role he played in college. If that translates, don't be surprised if he takes a massive leap this season. At safety, meanwhile, something special might be brewing. One ascending young safety is basically getting a private tutoring session from a defensive coordinator who himself once played the position at an elite level. Combine that with a dynamic, aggressive safety already drawing praise as one of the best free agent additions of the offseason, and you might be looking at the best safety tandem this franchise has fielded in a decade. And when your back end is that dangerous, it changes everything up front. The pass rush can be more aggressive, the coverage can disguise more looks, and the entire defense becomes exponentially more dangerous. Offensively, the drama isn't just at receiver, it's also in the trenches, where a tight left guard battle remains completely unresolved. One veteran appears to have a slight edge after starting day 1 with the first team, but the competition shifted the very next day when another contender took his spot, regardless of who wins. Protecting the franchise quarterback remains the top offensive priority, and expect the coaching staff to rotate personnel strategically between run and pass situations to keep opposing defenses guessing. And then there's the tight end room, which might be one of the most underrated units in the entire NFL. If the starting tight end can stay healthy after last year's knee injury, he's a legitimate top 5 receiving weapon at the position, someone who can shred defenses out of the slot or the seam. Pair that with arguably a top 3 blocking tight end in football and a steady third option continuing to develop, and Buffalo suddenly has a 3 tight end grouping that could be nearly impossible to defend. The whole league seems to have caught on to this trend. Teams spent this year's draft loading up on tight ends to run heavier personnel groupings. Buffalo already has the pieces. If health cooperates, this offense could be lethal in ways defenses simply aren't built to handle. Elsewhere around the roster, the kicking situation remains a minor storyline worth monitoring. The team's veteran kicker is officially back on the field after battling through significant injury issues, though he remains the only kicker currently practicing, which is something to watch as camp progresses. On the flip side, one wide receiver remains on the physically unable to perform list, while a pair of linebackers are working through individual rehab drills on the side, aiming to ramp back into full team activity soon. Meanwhile, one veteran pass rusher is fully back and reportedly playing with a rare intensity, ready to terrorize opposing quarterbacks all season long. In roster depth news, the Bills recently added a cornerback out of a smaller professional league, a depth signing unlikely to make waves on the 53-man roster, but worth monitoring for a possible practice squad spot depending on how health shakes out. There's also real intrigue in the return game, where a veteran receiver could carve out a role on special teams depending on how the competition unfolds among several other options. And finally, here's the story that might have Bills fans buzzing the most in the long run. The team's former defensive leader, the man who shaped this culture for nearly a decade, was recently spotted spending time with another NFL franchise, clearly evaluating and learning in preparation for what many believe is inevitable, a return to the head coaching ranks in 2027. The league is always hungry for proven leadership, and there's no shortage of teams that could use exactly what he brings to the table. So there it is, a full download of everything brewing in Buffalo before a single pad has even been strapped on. Touchdown connections finding their rhythm. A veteran defensive back rewriting his own narrative in the most unexpected way possible. A defense that might be scarier than anyone predicted. And a coaching carousel storyline already forming for next offseason. This is only the beginning, and if day 1 and day 2 brought this much drama, buckle up, because once the pads go on, things are about to get very real, very fast. If you enjoyed this breakdown, do not scroll away without hitting that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow. Drop a comment letting us know which storyline has you most excited, and if you haven't already, smash that subscribe button so you never miss a single update from Buffalo Bills training camp. Go Bills!